Part 56. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 555. 547, God of Sleep, Medium. Boom flames shot out from the flamethrower, igniting the scene where the blue tyrant killed just now into a sea of flames. Seeing this scene, Marlowe breathed a sigh of relief. The tyrant has been dealt with. She turned her head and said to the officers following, "Respond quickly to the communication of the whole army, reconnect the cut cables, replenish the officers who died in battle as soon as possible, and promote them from the lower ranks if they can't. Can have the initial ability to act? Yes. Come with me, you guys. Let's go to the jurisdiction of the 034th Battalion. There was an explosion there before." Marrow rubbed her temples, and drove towards the south of Bailong Town with several other officers. On the scene here, the flamethrower has sprayed a whole tank of fuel, and the flame is still burning. The officer present commanded a bulldozer to push out a wall of earth around the tyrant's body, ready to bury it after the flames were extinguished. "Okay, let's put out the fire. Such a big fire, don't attract planes from the ruined city." The officer beckoned, and several people took the fire extinguisher and sprayed it on the middle. After the flames were extinguished, a pile of charred remains was revealed in the middle. Just when the officer was about to let the bulldozers bury it, he suddenly saw that there seemed to be several gaps in the pile of coke. And in the gap, you can still see red light flashing rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "What is this?" the officer exclaimed. Immediately afterwards, he saw these cracks open suddenly, and then a figure flashed past. Almost in an instant, the movement of the officer and the soldiers next to him stopped. Then a lot of blood suddenly spewed out from their chests. Plop, plop, several corpses fell to the ground, but the officer's corpse was grabbed by the figure and lifted up. With the fire still burning around them, everyone saw that the blue tyrant stood up again. However, its current form has changed. Its chest cavity swelled a lot, and the heart swelled even higher, tearing the outer layer of skin. What's even more frightening is that its gums, which were similar to those of normal people, have now become much larger and protrude outwards, which makes it unable to close its mouth, revealing those 2 rows of densely packed fangs. Moreover, the muscles on its body were constantly bulging, with countless blue veins protruding from it, and it was even wriggling constantly. And its left hand has become several times bigger, and its 1-meter-long sharp claws are like long swords. The high concentration and extremely unstable T-virus and sleeping god gene in the sleeping tyrant's body mutated violently in a short period of time, and it successfully evolved based on the damage it suffered just now. Pooh! The head of the officer's corpse was crushed and exploded like a balloon, and blood splattered everywhere. It's not dead yet." a soldier yelled hysterically. The cry immediately attracted the sleeping god tyrant, who turned his head, stared at the soldier with cloudy eyes, and let out a terrible roar from his wide-open mouth, hiss. Kill it. Hurry up." All the soldiers present were stunned by the aura of this monster, and those who reacted quickly immediately raised their assault rifles and fired at that side. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Countless bullets were fired, however. The figure of the sleeping god tyrant has disappeared. Almost at the same time, the soldier who yelled just now was grabbed by it and torn in half from left to right. Da-da-da-da. Dozens of soldiers around fired at the same time, but the figure of the sleeping god tyrant disappeared again. These bullets all missed, they couldn't catch the figure of the sleeping god tyrant at all. Even if a few bullets hit it, they would all be bounced off by the muscles on its body, unable to cause any damage at all. Ah! Ah! The screams kept ringing out, and these soldiers were easily killed without any room to resist. A soldier hid behind the bulldozer and fired the RPG-7 rocket launcher. Whoosh! The rocket was launched instantly and flew towards the sleeping god tyrant. However, the sleeping god tyrant suddenly swung his claws and hit the rocket accurately. The rocket was bounced crookedly, and then exploded behind it. Seeing this lightning-like reaction ability, the soldier holding the bazooka was completely frightened. With a bang, the smoking bazooka dropped from his hand. Hiss! The sleeping god tyrant let out an angry roar, and then the ground under his feet burst instantly, and his figure disappeared again. The next second, boom! With a loud noise, the bulldozer was completely knocked away by the sleeping god tyrant, and moved several meters across the ground. The soldier was thrown out by inertia, and before he landed, the sleeping god tyrant snatched him into his hands, and then he clasped his hands together. The ear-piercing scream stopped abruptly, and the soldier was crushed into a bloody ball by the sleeping tyrant. A large amount of blood spattered from the fleshy ball, and a stench filled the air. In less than a minute, dozens of soldiers occupying the surrounding terrain were slaughtered by the sleeping god tyrant. After a while, the corpses of those soldiers who were still intact stood up one after another, groaning and rushing towards the living people around them. The sleeping god tyrant looked around, chose a direction, leaped suddenly, jumped high, grabbed the outer wall of the building with the sharp claws of his left hand, and ran towards the next soldier station like flying over the eaves and walls. A few minutes later, there were also gunfire and screams, and the killing of sleeping god continued. "Sir! That monster has been resurrected." A soldier ran up to Marrow crying and shouted. Marlowe felt a sudden jump in her heart, and hurriedly asked, "What happened? Isn't that tyrant already eliminated?" "I don't know, it's resurrected. It's resurrected. It killed a lot of people. Bastards. Are you idiots? It has been said in the combat manual that in the face of the mutated monsters of the T-virus, you only need to form a dense formation and concentrate your firepower to kill them." Marrow slapped him. Angrily said, We can't hit it, it's too fast. You can't see it when you run." The soldier said with tears in his eyes, covering his red and swollen face. The blow to him tonight was really too great. "Where is the monster now?" "To the east of the city. We drove a few armored vehicles to block it, but we don't know the result yet." A look of coldness flashed in the corner of Marlowe's eyes. She took out a pair of silver gloves and put them on for herself. Then she grabbed an assault rifle and carried it on her back, and walked out. "Go. My old lady will deal with it herself." The jeep that Marlowe was riding was heading towards the east of the city where the sleeping god tyrant was raging just now, but when she approached here, she suddenly found that the scene was already a scene of tragedy. 3 BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles were paralyzed on the road with billowing smoke. The hatches of these infantry fighting vehicles were violently torn off, and a lot of blood continued to flow inside. One can imagine how the occupants inside were. Up. Dozens of corpses were lying on the ground, and some corpses were shaking and trying to get up. All gone? With 3 armored vehicles? Marlowe turned pale with shock. Where is the blue tyrant? Hurry up and kill those zombies. At this time, she suddenly had a warning sign in her heart, and turned around suddenly, and found that terrible blue tyrant was squatting on a telephone pole, with blood dripping from his open bloody mouth. Note 1. Monster. Die. Marrow roared, picked up the assault rifle and fired a burst of fire. However, the telegraph pole under the sleeping tyrant's feet exploded, and his figure disappeared. As an experimenter in the Silver Group, Marrow's reaction and eyesight were far beyond ordinary people, and she instantly caught the figure of the sleepy tyrant. It jumped up high in an instant, jumped more than 10 meters into the air, and then grabbed it with the huge claw of its left hand. Note 1, the sleeping god tyrant is one of the strongest tyrants in the official setting. According to the setting, the models of those tyrants including trackers are up to level 6, while the sleeping god tyrant is classified as level 7, that is to say, sleeping god is at least one level stronger than tracker. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 556. 548, God of Sleep, Part 2. Maro didn't dare to defend the blow. She jumped out of the car with all her strength, and appeared several meters away in a flash. Immediately afterwards, there was only a bang, and the sleeping god tyrant fell from the sky and directly hit the jeep she was riding in just now. Boom! The huge force smashed the jeep upside down, the axle broke, and countless parts flew around. The driver and the two accompanying officers were already torn apart by this blow, and they couldn't die anymore. The speed and power are more than one level stronger than before. Which Resident Evil tyrant is this? Maro Wei's pupils tightened like needle points, and a strong sense of crisis was like an invisible hand. Cling to her heart tightly. The tyrant in front of her had a different blue-gray color than the other tyrants she knew, and was much smaller in size. Even after one mutation, it was at most about 1.9 meters in height. Before the mutation, if you don't look at its left paw, it is basically the size of an ordinary person. But it happened that such a tyrant brought her endless sense of oppression. No. If you look carefully, you can find that the muscles of this tyrant in front of you are much tighter than other tyrants, and the black blood vessels that are constantly wriggling on it are also increasing the explosive power of the muscles. What's more obvious is the bulging heart. Its heart was beating fiercely and powerfully, so powerful that even the tyrant's skin couldn't cover it. Maro immediately understood that if the familiar T-103 tyrant was a bodybuilder, then this blue tyrant was a fighting master. Cold sweat began to flow from her forehead, and she gently opened the combat recorder on her shoulder. This is a small video camera, mainly used to record her battles with some strong men. After all, there are as many as 200 experimenters in this world, so knowing the opponent's ability after the battle is the most important. But now facing the sleeping god tyrant, Maro Wei no longer had the confidence to survive. She only hoped that if she really couldn't survive, she could at least leave some useful information for Lu Weiwei and Ni Dong. Then she immediately raised her assault rifle and aimed at the sleeping god tyrant with a burst of fire. Da-da-da-da. A long bolt of lightning spewed out from the muzzle of the gun, and the electromagnetically accelerated bullet instantly tore through the air, but everything fell through the air. The sleeping god tyrant dodged to the side at an extremely fast speed, then quickly evaded left and right, and rushed towards him with an irregular trajectory. Maro let go of the trigger and swung the assault rifle and slammed it at it. With a bang, the barrel of the gun collided hard with the arm of the sleeping god tyrant. At this moment, Maro felt as if she had been hit by a speeding train. The jaws of the tiger burst open instantly, the assault rifle was smashed to pieces, and she was also taken flying far away. The sleeping god tyrant was also staggered by this blow. It roared angrily, and its feet exploded instantly. It came after Marlowe before she landed. Maro finally unleashed the strength of her silver team during this life and death. She twisted her waist suddenly in mid-air, kicked her feet on the tyrant, jumped away again, and stood firmly after a somersault. At this time, the leather shoes she was wearing before were also kicked off by her. On her feet, she was also wearing a pair of silver-white rubber stockings, and even her 5 toes were separated. A faint light began to radiate from her hands and feet, and 2 daggers appeared in her hands, and then she did not retreat but rushed towards the sleeping god tyrant. The tyrant swung the paw of his left hand without hesitation and grabbed it on the head, but Maro's body twisted very strangely, barely avoiding the tyrant's claw, and then kicked it in the face. Boom! The silver energy erupted, and the sleeping god tyrant was kicked violently, and the dagger in Maro's hand instantly left 2 scars on the tyrant's body. But it immediately turned around and took another claw. However, this attack still failed, and Maro clung to the tyrant. Her body was weak and boneless, and she could make any unimaginable movements. She landed on the ground with her left hand and left foot, and her right hand and right foot were very flexible to continuously attack the tyrant. The silver energy exploded continuously. When the tyrant counterattacked, she turned her body and turned her hands to the ground again, kicking the sleeping god tyrant fiercely with both feet. Hard. This is her ability. She has developed her ability in a certain world, and obtained the ability Storm Axle. She can change the centrifugal force of her body. Her hands and feet are equally flexible, and her body is very flexible. In order to make up for the weakness of this ability, she practiced the silver-white internal force, which raised her physical strength and destructive power to a higher level. In such a close-fitting situation, the sleeping god tyrant couldn't hit Marrow at all, and his advantages in speed and strength couldn't be brought into play at all. But Marlowe relied on her own ability to use the pair of daggers to leave scars on the tyrant's body. Now she was holding knives on both feet, spinning like a windmill, and the sleeping god tyrant waved his claws and smashed countless big holes in the ground, but it still didn't help. However, the battle lasted for several minutes, but the sleeping god tyrant never stopped, like a perpetual motion machine, and continued to attack. But Marrow couldn't do it. She was a little dizzy now. Perhaps because it has been unable to hit the enemy, the sleeping god tyrant is getting more and more irritable. It keeps making terrifying roars, and its heart beats harder and harder, even tearing the skin on its chest. Marrow saw this accurately, and her eyes froze. It's now. Her speed suddenly increased, her body's centrifugal force was constantly changing, and she looked like she was falling backwards and swaying from side to side, but in fact, she didn't care about it every time she landed. No matter how awkward her movements are, she stands as firm as Mount Tai, and can exert her greatest strength. Whoosh, easily dodging the straightforward claws of the sleeping god tyrant, Marrow held the dagger in her left hand and right foot, piercing the tyrant's heart like two fangs. However, at this time, she found that the tyrant hadn't moved at all. In an instant, an ominous premonition spread in her heart, and she quickly adjusted the centrifugal force to stop it, but it was already a step too late. The sleeping god tyrant stomped his feet, and the concrete floor under his feet was crushed by his foot, and the broken concrete block suddenly lifted up. Marrow had to turn her body to avoid it, but just as she turned to avoid the cement block, the tyrant's right hand had already hit her. Boom! Marrow was thrown flying by this punch, crashed directly into a building, and immediately fell unconscious. The sleepy tyrant was about to rush over, but at this moment, a shell fell on it suddenly, and the huge energy of the explosion knocked the tyrant to the ground. It was bloody, and the claw on its left arm drooped. On a BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle over there, a bloody Torch City soldier struggled to sit on the gun position, aiming with a grim expression, and opened fire. Boom! 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 The 73mm caliber low-pressure smoothbore gun of the BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle kept firing, but the figure of the sleeping tyrant disappeared again. It ran fast, dodged left and right, and all the shells fell through. With a bang, the sleeping god tyrant jumped onto the infantry fighting vehicle, grabbed the barrel and yanked it, pulling the entire cannon out. But this has not calmed its anger. It grabbed the turret, the muscles on its body bulged, and then only heard a creaking sound. The sleepy tyrant actually lifted the turret completely. The wounded soldier was sitting inside. Monster! Go to hell! The soldier cursed loudly, drew his pistol and shot desperately at the sleeping god tyrant. But the pistol bullets couldn't even shake the tyrant. He bent down, opened his mouth wide, and bit the soldier's head. Ah! Ah! Wow! A shrill scream sounded immediately, but the pistol was still firing, and even after the bullets were exhausted, the trigger was still subconsciously pulled. Phew! Suddenly a rocket flew over and hit the armored vehicle. Boom! The violent explosion immediately blew the armored vehicle into scrap iron, and even the ammunition compartment and fuel compartment of the armored vehicle were also detonated, and huge flames rose into the sky. Go to hell. Bastard. Tremblingly, Maraway dropped the bazooka in her hand, connected to the communication, and roared loudly, "Fire in the direction of the fire! Fire! Kill that bastard!" The whistling sound of shells came quickly, and then, boom! Boom! 2 shells landed nearby, followed by 2 more. Nod's ghost artillery has a very high accuracy rate, and it was aimed at the target after 2 calibration shots, and then it was intensive bombing. "This time, you humming, you should die," Maraway said, kneeling on the ground weakly, clutching her chest and panting continuously. "Fortunately, my old lady just went to the artillery position first." Hiss. However, a terrifying howl came again amidst the flames of the explosion. Marrow stood up abruptly, staring forward in disbelief. Boom! The burning ruins exploded, and a black shadow suddenly jumped tens of meters high, drew a perfect parabola in the air, and landed in front of Marrow with a bang. He is just over 2 meters tall, his skin has become darker, blue-black in color, and his muscles have accumulated to a terrifying degree. The black blood vessels have become thicker, almost covering his whole body, and some horny structures like fish fins have appeared on his back. The head is even less human-like, with a large number of cuticles making it look like a skeleton, and the protruding gums are covered with fangs. The heart was completely exposed, constantly emitting red light, beating abnormally powerfully. Sleepy tyrant. It has evolved again. Its body was at least twice as strong as before, bringing about an exponential increase in strength and explosiveness. This is the sleeping god tyrant. Hundreds of thousands of different genes were used to devour and kill each other, and after 3 weeks of screening, the only survivor Hypen's gene. Seeing the monster in front of her, Maraway no longer had the will to resist. She stared blankly at the sleeping god tyrant in front of her with a blank expression on her face. Puffchi. The blood is soaring. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 557. 5493 Battlefields. Boom. Boom. On the artillery position on the outskirts of Bailong Town, 3 ghost artillery were firing continuously into the city as ordered. Although these artillerymen didn't know what they were fighting, but this was a direct order from Marrow, and of course they would only execute it. Suddenly, there were a few subtle gunshots in the darkness, and several soldiers who were guarding the periphery fell down with bullets in their eyebrows at the same time. Immediately afterwards, several figures rushed out, aiming at the soldiers in the position and firing a burst of fire. They have already assigned targets before the action, and the soldiers everyone shoots are strictly divided to ensure maximum efficiency. It only took more than 10 seconds, and before these soldiers could react, they were all killed. Hank, Spectre, Bertha, Beltway, Four Eyes, and Yi came to the 3 ghost cannons. Beltway whistled excitedly and said, "It's finally time for me to play. Come on, go away, and watch me set off a big firework for you." However, Four Eyes said coldly, "Old rules, the captured intact units need to be taken back to Boss Yan for analysis. Then just keep 1. How about giving me 2 to blow up?" Beltway said with a hippie smile. "Then you tell her." Four Eyes glanced at Yi who had climbed up to the cannon to check. Beltway immediately shrank his neck, not daring to speak anymore. The sleeping god tyrant has entered the city now. In the current state, it is impossible for the 2nd Infantry Division to stop it. Ghost said from the side. But after all, it is the strength of an infantry division. If it can be reorganized, it will not be a problem to kill the sleeping god tyrant. Bertha replied. They won't have a chance to organize. Yi stood on the cannon, looking at Bailong Town and said coldly. We can't let the sleeping god tyrant kill without limit, otherwise it will probably evolve to a level that even we can't solve it. Hank said, "Let's go, let's advance to the city and create some chaos." Four Eyes pointed at the cannon and said, "I can transform some shells and send a T-virus into the city. Anyway, the residents of Bailongtown have been driven away by Torch City. But it may still cause the virus to spread, and it will be troublesome if it spreads beyond Bailongtown." Hank shook his head. "We have many ways to kill those zombies running around, and I have also tested that in this world, the spread of the T-virus will be greatly restricted. Because the virus will soon be swallowed by tiberium and become a bunch of new tiberium crystals." Four Eyes said. "I also agree with Four Eyes' proposal. After all, the opponent is an infantry division. Even if the sleeping god tyrant is used, it will not be so easy to deal with." Bertha also said. Hank thought for a while and nodded, "Yes, but we can only fire 5 virus shells at most. The rest of the chaos is still created by us. The most important thing is that we have to get the first-hand experience of the sleeping god tyrant." Combat data. Four Eyes nodded, walked over and kicked Beltway, "Get up and work, disassemble 5 shells for me." Beltway yelled and jumped up, roaring with teeth and claws, "Don't think that you are great now that you have been strengthened. The first thing I will do after I have also strengthened is to beat you to the ground." Cian sneered, took out a syringe, shook it, and pressed it into the injection gun. Beltway lowered his head, obediently ran to the side, squatted down and began to dismantle the 155 mm caliber shells of the Phantom cannon. Hank looked at Bailongtown and the 2nd Infantry Division, which had been on fire everywhere and fell into chaos again. In the flames, he suddenly saw a black figure in the shape of a human jumping up. It can be seen from him, which means that the black shadow jumped at least 200 meters high. The tracer bullets pulled out long strips of light and shot out from the ground, following the shadows, but they had no effect at all. After the black shadow fell to the ground, there was another burst of flames in that place. Through the gas mask, Hank's breathing became much heavier. "Destroy the 2nd Infantry Division as soon as possible, before the sleeping tyrant completely loses control." At the same time, in the northeast direction of the ruined city, the mining area battlefield. 2 Quantum-class tank robots are in the middle of nowhere on the battlefield, surrounded by the burning wreckage of stealth tanks. Nod stealth tanks are only suitable for sneak attacks. For example, these 20 stealth tanks easily destroy Chunyuyan's defense line in the ruined city. In fact, if a frontal attack is adopted, Chunyuyan's fixed electromagnetic guns deployed in the mining area will cause devastating damage to the 6th Armored Regiment. Fortunately, the ruined city did not devote all its troops to the first-line defense. Therefore, after the defense line of the mining area was destroyed, the robot army, which was originally a mobile defense force in the rear, immediately pushed up, and paralyzed the stealth function of all stealth tanks in one fell swoop through the traps set before. The 3-meter-tall quantum-level tank robot is slowly advancing on the battlefield, and behind it, the guard robot, turret robot, and assembly robot troops are also cleaning the battlefield. The stealth tank unit has been completely destroyed. Without the stealth ability, this tank has no way to cause any damage to this terrible robot. The remaining soldiers running around also became the targets of the robots. They showed no mercy and would only shoot and kill all hostile targets that appeared in front of them according to the instructions, even kneeling down to beg for mercy. The main force of the 6th Armored Regiment who came behind was also disrupted by the airdrop terrorist robots, causing them to be completely out of touch with the stealth tanks, giving the robot troops time to destroy the stealth tanks. And after they finally dealt with those terrifying robots, the remaining 50 or so tanks and armored vehicles could only face the robot army in the ruined city head-on in a scattered formation. And don't forget, inside the mining area, there is also a mutant tracker that can easily destroy a single tank and is watching. An armor-piercing projectile was fired at the Quantum-class tank robot. Under the repulsive force of the electromagnetic field, the armor-piercing projectile was only slightly skewed in trajectory, and the shoulder armor of the tank robot was blown away. At the same time, the lightning ball launched by the quantum-level tank robot also exploded among the tick tank troops. On the outskirts of Fortress Iron Hammer, the 1st Infantry Division had completely collapsed. There were scattered and fleeing soldiers everywhere along the way, and even the officers couldn't stop them from firing their guns into the sky. The main force of the ruined city finally appeared at this time. On the second day of the battle, Torch City finally saw the main force of ruined city for the first time. But after experiencing aerial bombing, harassment, synth chaos, and nuclear bomb attacks, the army of Torch City has completely lost its will to fight. But unexpectedly, the army in the ruined city did not continue to pursue to expand the results of the battle. They immediately turned around and headed north, gathered all the troops of more than 1,000 people and rushed straight to the 12th Armored Division station on the left flank of the Torch City army. In this battle, Ruined City invested all its tank troops, about 70 tanks, including 50 tick tanks, more than 10 T-72 tanks and a small number of M2F light tanks. At the same time, more than 100 power armors participated in the battle. Almost all the aircraft in the ruined city now, more than 20 Avenue-49 Hornet fighters bombed the 12th Armored Division. Molecular transmitters are also constantly sending terror droids into the formations of the 12th Armored Division. Although the 12th Armored Division split out 2 armored regiments, it still had an armored regiment, a self-propelled artillery regiment, an air defense regiment and several independent armored battalions. Division Commander Robert also has more than 200 tanks and armored vehicles of various types, with a total strength of more than 5,000 troops. The army facing the ruined city still has an absolute advantage in strength. However, under the command of Knight, the army in ruined city was not afraid. They attacked the 12th Armored Division's garrison head-on. The biggest frontal battle since the start of the war finally broke out. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 558. 5503 Ultimate Moves. In Torch City, Robert's 12th Armored Division did not expect that they would be attacked suddenly, and a large number of terrifying robots were sent in suddenly, completely catching them by surprise. Indeed, no one would have imagined that Lu Weiwei led the entire army of Torch City, and an army of 40,000 attacked Ruined City, a small town with less than 10,000 civilians, and would suffer such a heavy blow. Before Robert led the 12th Armored Division to the rescue of Torch City, he didn't expect this at all. At that time, the main task given to him by General Anton Slavik was to guard against a third-party force in the eastern region other than GDI and Nod the Mysterious Dragon. As for the Ruined City Enchenuyen, he had never heard of it at that time. And now his 12th Armored Division is suddenly attacked by the Ruined City Armored Forces, and he is completely unprepared. He had been notified of Lu Weiwei's battle plan, and he would never have imagined that with Lu Weiwei personally leading the team, the 1st Infantry Division would be beaten to total collapse in less than 2 hours. You must know that in Torch City, the 2nd Infantry Division was obtained through the mobilization of reserves, and the 12th Armored Division was reinforced by the Nod headquarters. In fact, the 1st Infantry Division is Lu Weiwei's true direct descendant, the Foundation. Even if the East 3rd District is a very remote and unnoticed war zone, how weak is the army in the hands of a warlord who can occupy a big city like Torch City? The Nod Brotherhood can compete with GDI, relying on countless local warlords like Lu Weiwei. According to Robert's original plan, he planned to send additional armored troops to enter the ruined city from the mining area along the direction of the 6th Armored Regiment immediately after the 1st Infantry Division occupied Fortress Hammer. Because at that time, the energy of ruined city will definitely be on the Hammer Fortress. He happened to stab the back of the ruined city with the mobility of the armored force. As for the failure of the 1st Infantry Division, he and his staff did not even have a plan. Because in the worst-case scenario he imagined, it was just the 1st Infantry Division in a stalemate in the Hammer Fortress. Who the hell knew that more than 10,000 people in the 1st Infantry Division would completely collapse in less than 2 hours, and then scattered like birds and beasts? Even the 1st Armored Division of GDI's most elite Steel Claw unit can't do it, can it? When Robert saw the battlefield in full swing, he felt like his head was getting bigger. On the battlefield, hundreds of tanks collided without fancy. Under the command of the frontline Commander Knight, the Tick tanks in the ruined city advanced in a wave formation, and immediately transformed into a turret mode after advancing for a certain distance, and then carried out fierce fire suppression on the opponent. At the same time, the rearmost wave of Tick tanks returns to tank mode and begins to charge forward. T-72 tanks and AMX-10P infantry fighting vehicles rely on their own large-caliber artillery to hide behind and fire black guns. The 12th Armored Division fought in a hurry. Their formation was scattered. After being attacked and losing a few trucks, they began to organize a counterattack, but the depth of the battlefield had already lost a lot. Fortunately, they were in a defensive position, and immediately more than 40 Tick tanks rushed to the front line and turned into turrets to stabilize their position. In this burst of Tick tank fire, neither side achieved much results. The battle between Tick tanks is very obviously a battle where the shield is bigger than the spear. The main anti-armor weapon of this kind of tank is their main gun -90mm caliber electrothermal gun. Although the electrothermal technology is used, the pressure of the gun chamber is more than 3 times higher than that of ordinary propellant gunpowder to obtain a greater initial velocity of the shell, but the caliber is after all flawed. Facing the tanks and armored units in the real world, and even in most other worlds, the Tick tank's firepower is completely sufficient. But in the world of Command and Conquer, the firepower of this tank is a bit weak. Don't forget tiberium. Under the influence of tiberium mines, the industrial system in the world of Command and Conquer can easily obtain all kinds of rare metals, and as much as they want. Therefore, the material technology in this world is definitely beyond the real world by hundreds of years. Tick tanks piled up with various rare metals, especially the Tick tanks in turret mode with double-layer armor on the front, it is difficult for the 90mm caliber electric heat gun to penetrate the front. Under such circumstances, the number of tanks is only 1/3 of the opponent, there is a serious lack of self-propelled artillery, and the number of infantry is only 1/4 of the opponent's main force in the ruined city. It is impossible to break through the defense line of the 12th Armored Division. However, in the hands of the ruined city, there are 3 ultimate moves. Air Force. The AV-49 Wasp fighters are now almost all flying sorties into the battlefield on the left wing of Torch City, bombarding the formation of the 12th Armored Division indiscriminately. There are a total of more than 20 Wasp fighters, half of which are equipped with bomb pylons. They gallop in the air unscrupulously, carrying out air strikes on every ground target. Under the bombing of the ruined city Air Force, the self-propelled artillery regiment equipped by the 12th Armored Division was severely hit. More than 40 artillery positions were destroyed and more than 30 were destroyed, almost losing their long-range fire support capabilities. And the 12th Armored Division couldn't even fight back because scary robot. From the beginning of the battle, Knight asked Justin Air to use all the molecular transmitters to send terrorist robots to the 12th Armored Division. In order to meet the needs of the battlefield here, even the battles in the mining area, the terrorist robots are airdropped by Me-24 Hind gunships. Terrorist robots kept appearing out of thin air in the positions of the 12th Armored Division, and then immediately rushed towards the nearby tanks at an extremely fast speed. These terrorist robots are under the control of the Red Queen, and they don't get entangled with the infantry covering them at all, and all their targets are aimed at the tanks. For a while, the garrison of the 12th Armored Division was in chaos. Countless terrorist robots appeared one by one, and they lost more than 20 tanks and armored vehicles within 10 minutes of the battle. Although the nearby infantry unit wiped out hundreds of terrorist robots, the horror robots in the ruined city seemed to be endless, and as many as they were destroyed, they would be teleported, and even more. Regarding this, Boss Yan just wanted to say that the horror robot is a mere level 2 technology. The production line has already produced more than a dozen production lines, and now the other party is not destroying the horror robot as fast as he is. The self-propelled anti-aircraft guns and short-range anti-aircraft missile positions of the Air Defense Regiment of the 12th Armored Division inside the garrison were destroyed by terrorist robots in large numbers. Send them over and bring them disaster. As a result, the Air Defense Force of the 12th Armored Division was almost paralyzed. Even if there were some anti-aircraft guns and anti-aircraft missiles launched, they were only scattered and could not form a scale at all, let alone a threat. With the performance of the AV-49 Wasp fighter, even if it is targeted by an anti-aircraft missile, the wingman next to it can easily turn 90 degrees on the spot to help teammates intercept the missile. There are planes in the sky, and terrorist robots inside. The 12th Armored Division can send 40 TIC tanks to the front line to meet the limit. What artillery support, what air defense cover, nothing. None. After half an hour of the intense yet brutal confrontation of hundreds of tanks, the ruined city's third ultimate move finally came into play. Power armor troops. The situation on the battlefield is in the Easter egg chapter after the previous chapter, which can be viewed on the mobile phone. The overall situation is still under review and has not been sent out. You should be able to see it tomorrow. Recommend the new book of the group owner, Xian God Rice. Travel across the world of Dragon Ball and become Gohan. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 559. 551 Frontal Battlefield. With the cover of the artillery fire of the TIC tank unit, the infantry unit of the ruined city finally entered the battlefield. More than 100 power armors took the lead. They maximized the power of the power armor, and their running speed could even reach 30 km per hour. These powered armor units were not afraid of the shooting of light weapons, and because they were covered by the firepower of their own TIC tanks, they did not waste their firepower on the front of the TIC tanks in Torch City, but focused on running. TIC tanks of the 12th Armored Division spotted these power armor units and immediately attacked. The 6-barreled machine gun on the turret parallel to the main gun fired out bullets like raindrops, but these 7.62 mm caliber bullets were dense, but they couldn't penetrate the armor of the power armor at all. Moreover, when these tanks attacked the power armor, the pressure on the tank troops in Ruined City immediately dropped greatly. Knight seized the opportunity and immediately ordered the tank troops to press further. In this head-to-head contest, TIC tanks' weaknesses are exposed. First of all, the 6-barreled machine gun and the main gun on the tank are installed side by side on the turret, so when the TIC tank attacks the infantry unit, the main gun cannot be aimed at the armored unit. This design can be said to be cerebral palsy. In addition, the firepower of the TIC tank is too weak, whether it is a 7.62 mm caliber 6-barreled machine gun or a 90 mm caliber main gun, the caliber is too small. But there is no way, because a lot of the internal space of the TIC tank is used for the deformation device. Moreover, the turret mode of the TIC tank is also very weak. Although the attack surface of the tank in the turret mode is much smaller, and the front becomes double-layer armor, it sacrifices mobility. After turning into turret mode, once the flanks and back are exposed, it is absolutely deadly. Therefore, this kind of brain-opening product of Nod's designers did not exist on the stage of Command and Conquer for a long time before it completely withdrew from the battlefield stage. Seizing the opportunity of the TIC tank to lose sight of the other, the power armor troops quickly outflanked the two wings. Torch City's infantry covering the tank troops were no match for the power armor at all. Most of the weapons in their hands are useless against power armor, and they can only retreat, exposing the flanks of many TIC tanks. The TIC tank units of the 12th Armored Division were thrown into disarray. They began to exit turret mode and wanted to retreat, but the power armor did not give them this opportunity. Boom! Boom! The soldiers of the ruined city wearing power armor raised their missile launchers one after another, aiming at the side and rear of the tick tank. There was a burst of indiscriminate bombardment, destroying several tanks immediately. Knight accurately grasped this fighter, and he shouted into the microphone, "All tick tanks return to normal mode. Assault at full speed." With one order, all the tick tanks in the ruined city exited the turret mode, regained their mobility, and then increased their horsepower and rushed towards the position of the 12th Armored Division. With terrifying robots constantly being sent in from the inside, Wasp fighters bombing indiscriminately in the sky, and the front line of defense being breached again, even if the 12th Armored Division has 4 times the strength of the ruined city, there is only one ending. Defeat is inevitable. Lu Weiwei stood up, looked at the command center where corpses were strewn across the field, and was silent. When the 1st Infantry Division was defeated by the nuclear strike, his staff was also a little unstable. Those staff wanted to escape, so Lu Weiwei killed them all. Ni Dong stood there in a daze, muttering in his mouth, "Impossible, this is impossible, why? Why?" It seems that what Duan Heshan said is correct. The restrictions on the means of teleportation in the ruined city are smaller than we imagined. So much so that they can use them at will. Lu Weiwei still remained calm. Just because this teleportation device exists, we have no chance of winning. Especially since they have nuclear weapons. Ni Dong pulled his hair vigorously. We should have thought about it, since they have the power armor of the Fallout world. It is not surprising to get nuclear bombs from there. Actually, I am more concerned about why our headquarters was not attacked by nuclear bombs. Since they're clones, everyone has sneaked into the staff, shouldn't we send a nuclear bomb directly? I don't think we are capable of resisting the attack of a nuclear bomb. Lu Weiwei frowned. I don't know. Ni Dong shook his head subconsciously, but then suddenly raised his voice, "It's music. That song. Their teleportation is based on location. It's obvious. But the music," Lu Weiwei thought for a while, "I think I understand. In our headquarters, there are anti-electronic warfare equipment." "You mean, the teleportation in the ruined city can be countered with anti-electronic warfare equipment?" That's right, these equipment can interfere with the music they play." "It must be so." Ni Dong said loudly. Lu Weiwei nodded and said, "Now that you know the principle of teleportation, it will be much better. Let's fight to the death. After this battle, we can't even stay in Torch City anymore. Let Chun Yuyan take a good look. I have been in Torch City for many years. The prestige is not something you just talk about." "Yes. We still have a chance. Part of Robert's 12th Armored Division is on our left flank. On the right flank we still have Marlowe and the 2nd Infantry Division in Byron Town. The use of nuclear bombs will definitely attract GDI's interference." Before Ni Dong could finish his sentence, the voice in his head suddenly made him stunned. "Member of the Silver Sword team, experimenter Maro Saxton has died." Ni Dong was extremely astonished. He immediately turned around and looked at Lu Weiwei. "Maravi, she." Lu Weiwei's face also became extremely ugly. He nodded and replied, "Ah, I heard that too." "How is that possible? Maro should be at the headquarters of the 2nd Infantry Division. If she is dead, then it means that the 2nd Infantry Division is finished. The method is unknown." Lu Weiwei helped him finish the sentence. It's over, Ni Dong fell to his knees with a thud. "No. We still have a chance." Lu Weiwei looked out the window. The nuclear explosion has not continued for a while, and it seems that Ruin City is also worried about GDI. Maybe in 10 minutes, our communication will be caused by the nuclear explosion. Recovery from the electron pulse. And, the ion storm is coming. Ni Dong also walked over to look out the window, and sure enough, traces of electricity could already be seen gathering in the sky, which was very conspicuous in the night. Ion storm. That's great. Dong cheered up again. As long as the ion storm comes, the air force in the ruined city will be useless. And most likely they won't be able to use the teleportation device during the ion storm. Their trump card will be gone in an instant already. Let's gather the defeated army. Wait until the ion storm comes, let's counterattack. Lu Weiwei's expression looked a little ferocious. Counterattack. This is not. We must counterattack. Ruined City never thought that we would counterattack in this situation. And the ion storm will disrupt their deployment. In fact, you should think about it, counterattack is our only chance, return to Torch City, represents our complete failure. Lu Weiwei said flatly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 560. 552 Ion Storm. The battlefield in the mining area. Chen Yuyan squatted above a tiberium mining refinery, looking down at the battlefield soaked in blood and flames. The master mechanic stood next to him, constantly doing various secondary school poses, and shouting slogans. Look at that. This is the missile of justice. Destroy them. Light of courage. The iron fist of freedom. Destroy the invaders. A drop of cold sweat dripped from Chen Yuyan's forehead, and he made up his mind not to continue watching the battle. This is simply a kind of torture. I'm going to buy an orange, not, I'm going to kill their command car, you stand here and don't move. Chen Yuyan waved his hand, took out the burst shotgun, and there was a flash of lightning in his hand. Then he jumped straight down the stairs. That's right, he'd rather jump off a building than stay here with this robotic engineer in the late stage of secondary disease, making it look like Power Rangers. On the battlefield, the resistance of the 6th Armored Regiment of Torch City has become more and more scattered, and the battlefield is in chaos. Because the terrorist robots were all sent to the battlefield where night attacked the 12th Armored Division, the terrorist robots airdropped here have almost been consumed. Therefore, the main battle now revolves around the robot army with 2 quantum-level tank robots as the core. The robot army in the ruined city has not been established for a long time, so the number is not enough, and a part of Mr. Storm and the turret robot were assigned to support the ruins in the south of the city. Now there are more than 200 robots of various types here, mainly Iron Guard robots, assembly robots, and tank robots. However, in this contest of steel, only the assembled robots with close-range weapons. So the battle situation gradually became stalemate. Fortunately, the mutated tracker Rhubarb also hid in the mining area and continued to harass. Although it can't confront the tanks head-on, but with its own recovery speed and high-speed launch of tiberium crystals, it can also cause headaches for the tanks in Torch City. In such a stalemate, you need a stick to stir up the situation, commonly known as a shit stick. It seems that something is not right, anyway, just ignore them and disturb them. The ion storm is coming. Chen Yuyan looked at the sky, and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. Do you think that the ion storm will be your savior when it comes? Under his control, all the production lines of the Infinite Base did not stop for a moment, filled with robots from the world of radiation, as well as AV-49 Vespa fighters. Boom! A burst of dull thunder streaked across the air. Even in the darkness of night, one can see dark clouds gathering rapidly in the sky. Chen Yuyan felt that the hairs all over his body stood on end, and lightning flashed involuntarily on his arms. This is the new ability he got after 11 was resurrected. Click. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky, and it hit Chen Yuyan's body impartially. As if it was coming straight at him, the surrounding high-rise buildings and lightning rods all had no effect. Countless electric currents spread all over his body in an instant, and Chen Yuyan looked like an electric man at this moment. However, Chen Yuyan was not harmed by the lightning at all. On the contrary, he felt as if his chest was about to explode, and an infinite force raged and spread in his body. He couldn't help clenching his fists hard, and with a bang, countless electric currents spread out with his movements. Boom! Thick black clouds filled the sky, and there were countless lightning snakes swimming in the black clouds, and terrifyingly huge energy gathered in the sky. In places covered by black clouds, almost all electronic equipment failed, and radio communication was completely interrupted. The entire area is like an isolated island, cut off from all connections with other places. Kaka. A series of powerful lightning bolts descended from the sky, unscrupulously releasing that terrifying energy. Tiberium has caused human civilization to almost go extinct, and one of the culprits is the ion storm. In a place as large as the United States, ion storms occur almost every moment across the country, making the connection between the state and the locality intermittent. Long-distance airways have completely disappeared from the face of the earth, and not even streetcars can function. That is to say, transportation between the state and localities is also almost on the verge of interruption. Therefore, countries in the traditional sense gradually disappeared, and gathered towards the blue zone without such extreme weather, and finally achieved the hegemony of GDI. For a long time, the warfare in the world of command and conquer has also undergone great changes under the influence of extreme weather. The most obvious is the tactical use when the ion storm is approaching. Because in the ion storm, electronic equipment cannot be used. Although mechanical equipment can still be used, without the assistance of electronic equipment, the effect is greatly reduced. For example, without a fire control system and shooting elements, let the tank fire a shot and see how accurate it can be. So at this time, the Air Force is unavailable, the radar fails, the missiles become scrap iron, and all kinds of tanks and armored vehicles cannot exert their maximum combat effectiveness. On the contrary, infantry can flex its muscles in such an environment. In the last war 30 years ago, both NOD and GDI had many outstanding frontline commanders relying on infantry to launch a surprise attack during the ion storm and defeat the opponent's armored forces in one fell swoop. But in Bailongtown, the coming of the ion storm directly sentenced the 2nd Infantry Division stationed here to death. The sleeping god tyrant who has evolved to the 3rd stage is almost invincible in the town. It is so powerful that even the armor of an armored vehicle cannot resist its mutated claws. The speed is so fast that ordinary people can't see its trajectory at all, and the muscle power is so powerful that it can jump hundreds of meters, which is equivalent to jumping directly to the height of a 30-story building. Ordinary light weapons are completely ineffective against the current sleeping god tyrant. Even if they can penetrate its muscles, the wounds will heal in a very short time. As for weapons such as RPG rocket launchers, they can't even touch the side of sleeping god tyrant. When a platoon of 30 infantry faces the sleeping god tyrant, they will all be killed in just a dozen seconds. Under normal circumstances, the 2nd Infantry Division could immediately organize a large number of troops to encircle and suppress, relying on intensive firepower to compress the sleeping god tyrant's range of activities, and finally hit the heavy firepower to completely wipe it out. But the current situation is not normal at all. The synths lurking before had almost completely paralyzed the 2nd Infantry Division. In addition, the troops they sent out to enter the ruins south of the ruined city with ground-penetrating tanks were also elite troops, and most of the rest were recruits. Such a blow made the 2nd Infantry Division immediately incapacitated. It's not impossible to move, but that would be running around without organization, and a commander with a normal mind would not let such a thing happen. At this moment when the command was chaotic and the communication was interrupted, the sleeping god tyrant entered the city. Although the 2nd Infantry Division has more than 12,000 troops, the troops that can react in time to encircle and suppress have never exceeded the establishment of a company. Even if several companies around wanted to unite, but the communication was not smooth and the command was chaotic, it was impossible to coordinate their actions. Often the troops that arrived first had been slaughtered by the sleeping god tyrant before the follow-up troops arrived. What is even more untrustworthy is the morale of the recruits of the 2nd Infantry Division when they face such a terrifying monster. As soon as many troops saw the terrifying sleeping god tyrant, they turned and ran away, unable to organize at all. And the last straw that broke the camel's back of the 2nd Infantry Division was Marroway's death. As soon as Marrow died, the first person to know the news was the headquarters of the 2nd Infantry Division, and the division commander immediately retreated. Now that a strong man like Marrow is dead, what else can he do as an ordinary person? The images of the battlefield that were transmitted intermittently from some places were still being played on the screen. It was the bloody and terrifying killing of the sleeping god tyrant. After seeing these videos, the commander of the 2nd Infantry Division finally stopped hesitating and ran away with his guard company. Thanks to Samwick for rewarding Chinhuyan and Siyan with 1,200 starting coins. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 561. 553 Say Goodbye to God of Sleep. Ugh. Woo. On the streets of the town, the groans and howls of a large number of zombies rang out, and thousands of zombies rushed out in groups, rushing towards every living thing they could find. That's right, this hell scene, which is exactly the same as Raccoon Town, appeared in Bailong Town in another world. On the other side of the street, dozens of soldiers improvised a line of defense. They relied on barbed wire and sandbags, as well as some wood and clods to build a temporary roadblock to stop the zombies from advancing. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. The dense bullets could not stop the group of zombies from advancing. Even if they were hit by bullets and lost arms and legs, these zombies still continued to move forward. Moreover, most of these zombies originally came from two sources. One was killed by the sleeping god tyrant, and the corpses were relatively intact. The second is the virus distribution of the wolf pack team. Before they sneaked into the town, they fired 5 shells containing a large amount of T-virus. Even though the T-virus survived in the air for a short time, these 5 shells also killed hundreds of Torch City soldiers in the chaos. And these killed soldiers quickly stood up, mutated into zombies and even lickers, and began to snowball the number of BOW. With the further deepening of the research on the T-virus in the hands of Chinhuyan and the Ruin Legion is no longer the same as before, and the variability and transmission are much stronger. In addition, during the manufacturing process of the sleeping god tyrant, hundreds of thousands of the deadliest biological genes were put together, and they were made to kill each other through biological stimulation, and the final victory was achieved after 2 to 3 weeks by. The RNA sequence obtained in this case is the so-called sleep god gene hypnose DNA. After the T-virus mutates, its lethality is completely different from the original T-virus in Raccoon Town. And in fact, according to the documents Chinhuyan obtained from Umbrella Company. After the Raccoon City incident, Umbrella Corporation has formally conducted formal research on zombies as a byproduct of the T-virus attack. Because compared to air transmission and water transmission, zombie transmission is also very unique, and it is more difficult to resist. Each of the zombies infected in Bailong Town is far stronger than the zombies in Raccoon Town at that time. More powerful, faster and deadlier. This group of zombies rushed over all the way. Some zombies were maimed by bullets, but soon mutated again. If the leg is broken by a bullet, it will mutate into a leg covered with a mutated cuticle that can resist small caliber bullets. If the hand is broken by a bullet, it will mutate into an arm covered with tentacles or sharp claws. Attack their heads. Hit their heads. The officer howled hoarsely, and at the same time raised his submachine gun with a single shot, blasting the head of a zombie in front of him. Did you see that? If you blow their heads off, these zombies will be completely dead. Before he finished speaking, the zombie whose head was shot just now jumped up, and a big crocodile-like mouth grew out of the head, and it swallowed this in one bite. The officer's neck was bitten off. The 4 eyes adjusted the scope of the sniper rifle, and said coldly, "Why are those guys still hitting their heads? Who stipulated that BOW headshots must kill you? I found that many people seem to hold this unrealistic law. It should have been spread by those guys called experimenters, and I don't know who summed it up. Hank sat on the stone next to him and sneered, I don't know if there are other zombies, anyway, it was made by the T-virus. Zombies, headshots must die is just a characteristic of those low-level zombies in Raccoon City. What? Aren't zombies guaranteed to die if they get shot by their heads? Beltway has been a scumbag for a long time, and he doesn't know anything except explosions. The position that is really fatal to the T-virus B.O.W is the mutation core, which is also the place where the mutant provides energy for the entire body, and it is also the place where the concentration of the T-virus is the highest. For example, the heart position of the Tyrant series, or the abdomen position of the Hunter series, both it is fatal. Destroying these places will lead to a large loss of T-virus, which will make B.O.W completely lose the possibility of further mutation. Four Eyes said while aiming at his target. Poof, there was a soft sound. Four Eyes pulled the trigger, and a bullet full of pheromone was fired, silently nailed near the group of soldiers who were resisting. Immediately afterwards, only a terrifying animal roar was heard. A ferocious figure rushed over at high speed from a distance, it jumped up hundreds of meters, and then directly smashed into the center of the soldiers' position. A bloody massacre. All the Torch City soldiers present were easily killed by the sleeping god tyrant, and a few of them were even torn into pieces. What the sleeping god tyrant wants is not just killing, but bloody, tyrant killing. This is the murderous instinct implanted in its DNA. By opening this passage, the group of zombies should be able to rush directly to their headquarters, Four Eyes said. At this time, footsteps sounded lightly, and Yi didn't know when he came to them. She waved the flame-tongue sword in her hand indifferently, bringing up a scorching air current, and said lightly, the direction of the armory has been fixed. There are more than 20 infantry fighting vehicles over there, and I have already destroyed them. Bertha, how is the battle data collection of Sleepy Tyrant? Hank asked back. It's already been completed. Sleeping God fought against infantry units, against light armored units, and shot down a Harpy helicopter that was forced to take off just now. The combat data of different situations have been collected. Bertha replied coldly, and then added a sentence, in other words, there are only so many things the 2nd Infantry Division can do now. They can't put more pressure on the sleeping god tyrant. The number of zombies is already large enough. If there are more, it may get out of control. Ghost also said aside. The ion storm is coming. Hank answered something irrelevant, but looked up at the sky. I like this kind of weather. Because I never rely on those sophisticated electronic devices. Ghost snorted coldly, took the SV-98 sniper rifle on his back in his hand, and pulled the bolt. Say goodbye to Sleeping God. Looking at the direction of Sleeping God Tyrant with Four Eyes, he pressed a button in his hand. Over there, the Sleeping God Tyrant suddenly erupted with a terrifying roar, which was deafening. Then it turned around abruptly, its eyes full of chaos, bloodthirsty, and cruelty stared at the direction of the wolf pack team. Then the sleepy tyrant suddenly exerted force under his feet, and the ground exploded. He jumped hundreds of meters high, and jumped towards the direction of the wolf pack team. With the intuition of dying, we can actually perceive our position. The potential of Sleeping God is indeed infinite. The Four Eyes did not panic at all, still looking at Sleeping God Tyrant in mid-air. Pooh! I saw the Sleeping Tyrant who jumped into the air suddenly exploded, and the miniature bomb mixed with a high concentration of T-virus neutralizer exploded at the Sleepy Tyrant's heart, and at the same time, the Sleeping Tyrant's body, a large number of T-viruses in the body were also neutralized at the same time into stinky and pungent water without any viruses. Countless pieces of blue blood and flesh fell from the sky, and almost at the same moment, a powerful lightning also fell from the sky. Thanks to Samwick for rewarding Yi's 200 starting coins. Thanks for the 100 starting coins rewarded by the fox who lost his happiness. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 562. 554 Doomsday in Lightning, Part 1. Lightning storm descended on the ruined city area again. This is not a very novel thing. If it is true, the main reason is the powerful energy contained in the tiberium dust and spores that permeate the air, and after this energy produces an unknown reaction, it will pass through the ion storm. Burst out. According to research by scientists, the more dense the tiberium crystals, the greater the chance of lightning storms occurring. And the ruined city happened to be adjacent to the red zone in the 3rd East District. When the extremely powerful lightning fell, even most of the electronic equipment in the ruined city were affected. The Red Queen system went offline and entered self-protection mode. Communications everywhere were interrupted, and the radar system could not operate. Equipment including Me-24 Hind gunships, T-72 tanks, and Please-45 self-propelled artillery are all unusable. The TVs and radios that have gradually become popular among the residents of the ruined city are all disabled. Although a good lightning protection system prevents lightning storms from posing a fatal threat to the buildings, the residents still go to bed early, feeling uneasy. Looking at the lightning that keeps falling outside the window. But at this time, the army of Torch City was not so lucky. When the lightning storm came, almost the entire town of Bailongtown was plunged into darkness, and all power supply systems were paralyzed. Not only that, all communications were interrupted, and the entire 2nd Infantry Division had been completely dispersed by the sleepy god tyrant before, and now, when they couldn't see their fingers and had no communications available, they were completely turned into a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. This is the 5th Infantry Battalion. Calling the companies. Please answer. Please answer. In one building, the infantry battalion's Sign Alman was shouting into the phone, but there was only a busy tone coming from the phone. Outside the building, behind a makeshift line of defense made up of tables, chairs, and benches, hundreds of soldiers were shooting desperately. In front of them was a whole street of zombies. These zombies were all wearing Torch City military uniforms, steel helmets, and some bulletproof vests. It also makes it harder for resisting soldiers to kill them. The 2nd Infantry Division, unlike the relatively elite units of the 1st Infantry Division, did not wear full coverage helmets or uniforms with light bulletproof padding. It is precisely because of this that the T-virus is given an opportunity. In fact, if these people wear full coverage helmets, even if they become zombies, they can't bite people, no. But this is not important anymore. Even if these soldiers resist desperately, the zombie group is getting closer and closer to their defense line. The barbed wire fences and roadblocks set up in front were knocked away by the group of zombies one after another, and more zombies were attracted by the gunshots. Battalion Commander. The wired telephone communication has also been interfered with. The communications soldier said back with a mournful face. It's impossible. These cables can be used in lightning storms. Do you want to tell me that zombies will bite the telephone wires? The battalion commander slumped on a chair with a pale face. We have been surrounded, battalion commander. What to do? The adjutant almost collapsed, looking out the window and yelling. Some civilian staff have already picked up pistols, condescending and shooting out through the windows. However, the firepower of the pistol is basically a drop in the bucket for these improved zombies, and it can't even provide psychological comfort. Suddenly, there was a burst of noise outside the window, and the gunshots also became scattered, accompanied by rattling noises. The battalion commander quickly stood up and looked out the window, only to see that the group of zombies had rushed to the front of the defense line. Piled up tables, chairs, benches, and sandbags were knocked away one after another, and the zombies poured in like a tide. The soldiers who were resisting were either thrown to the ground by the zombies, or they fled in panic. The line of defense has been breached. Someone exclaimed. There was a click, and the sound of glass shattering came. The battalion commander suddenly turned his head. It was another room in their building, it should be empty. Then, he saw a terrifying scene. A monster with 4 limbs, no eyes, an exposed brain, and a meter-long tongue is crawling towards them. The moment this monster appeared, the battalion commander only felt his mind buzzing, almost blank. Trembling, he picked up the pistol, and while the adjutants and staff officers around him exclaimed, he shot himself in the temple. A hand wearing a black glove stretched out and cut a cable with a dagger. The ghost sneered and said, amateur-level wiring, with only basic camouflage. It seems that the army in Torch City is just too many people. However, they have a large number of people, which is an advantage for us. Bertha said sullenly. That's right, according to the scans before the ion storm came, more than 3,000 zombies had already been produced at that time. By now, the number of zombies should have doubled. Four Eyes said. Hank knocked on the glass next to him, and reminded, the battle here is almost settled. Justin Air sent me a communication before, asking us to find a way to collect these zombies. Maybe it will be useful in the future. That old man is a bastard with no bottom line, can you believe his words? Beltway said with a curled lip. It's okay to recycle, but it's a little troublesome. These naturally produced zombies are different from the B.O.W we made, and they won't follow our instructions. Four Eyes said. It doesn't matter, first introduce them into the building, and then use the container to pack them. When the time comes, just throw the container over and finish the job. The ghost said indifferently. I feel, Dad's current state is a bit strange. Yi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said. What happened to him? Four Eyes turned around and asked. He is having a good time now. Yi said. Boom. Chenyuan slammed his fist hard on a tic-tank. The force of the shock from the heavy armor made his fist ache, but his heart felt extremely happy. Sigh. An extremely powerful electric current was guided along Chenyuan's fist to the tic-tank, and almost at the same time, plumes of black smoke came out from the gap inside the tank. This feeling. Da-da-da-da. Another tic-tank fired at him with a 6-barreled machine gun, and all the bullets fired were attracted by the powerful magnetic field around Chenyuan's body, and fell to the ground after spinning in the air. Really are. Chenyuan aimed his palm at the tank, and a powerful bolt of lightning shot out from his palm, hitting the tank directly. The powerful energy immediately paralyzed the tank completely, and flames ignited in the engine. It's so cool. Click. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and struck Chenyuan again. He felt the energy he released just now came back, and he felt refreshed again. Is this what it feels like to be in control of power? So Chenyuan was immediately blown to death, and the book was over. Heavy fog, strike out the previous sentence. After venting for a while, Chenyuan found that there were no enemies around, so he looked around. He suddenly remembered that he originally wanted to kill the other party's command car, but he made such a fuss that the command car went nowhere. The 6th Armored Regiment has completely collapsed, and the ion storm has made all the electronic equipment of their tanks unusable. The most direct thing is that the fire control system has completely failed, and they can only aim with their eyes. Originally, the members of the 6th Armored Regiment thought that they would still have a chance to escape after the ion storm came. Because they have never seen a robot that can operate in an ion storm. However, leader, the ion storm is coming. Great. Those 2 perverted robots must have stopped now. Reverse immediately. Let's get out of here. The regiment leader patted the driver of the command vehicle on the shoulder and said loudly. The command vehicle, modified from the M-113 armored vehicle, immediately began to turn around and ran towards the periphery desperately. However, with a bang, the armored vehicle hit something and stopped. The driver looked ahead in horror, only to find that a quantum-level tank robot had blocked in front of the command vehicle at some point. But luckily, the robot was reversing, and seemed to be looking for a suitable shooting angle to attack a tick tank in front, and didn't pay attention to it. Robot, machine, robot, the driver looked at the robot in front of him, dumbstruck, unable to even speak. The team leader looked at the robot in front of him in despair, only feeling a burst of heat coming out of his crotch. Why can it still move, why? All I saw was that the robot in front of me turned around slowly, and the Tesla machine gun on its arm was aimed at their command vehicle. Thank you for the 100 starting coins rewarded under the white moon. Thanks Samwick for the reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingda Ren. Chapter 563. 555 Doomsday in Lightning, Medium. Boom, thunder and lightning flashed in the sky. Along with the lightning, raindrops began to fall, and the sky became even darker. Even if you look at the time, it is now close to dawn, but the little bit of sunlight that had just risen before was once again completely shrouded by endless black clouds. The night came again. Ruin City, the direction of the ruins to the south of the city. The Torch City's ground-penetrating troops guarding a depression finally came to their doom after the ion storm came. In the darkness, countless T-virus B.O.Ws swarmed up, as if smelling blood-eating sharks. Hunter Alpha with thick skin, not too slow, Hunter Beta with extremely fast response, even able to dodge bullets, Licker who can walk freely on the ceiling and walls, like a fish in water in the dark, ferocious natural zombie dogs, and some zombies infected in previous battles. Even in order to disperse the firepower of the soldiers in Torch City, Chinhuyan let the only mutated bat production line produce some mutated bats with the mentality that something is better than nothing. This is the building he just returned from the world of Resident Evil a long time ago to climb the technology tree. But because these bats were made extremely fast, there were actually hundreds of them when they were sent out. These B.O.Ws did not go dormant because the Red Queen went offline and entered the protection mode. On the contrary, because the control of the Red Queen was weakened, they were driven by instinct to become more ferocious and terrifying. If under the control of the Red Queen before, these B.O.Ws were an orderly army advancing and retreating, then the current B.O.Ws are a group of wolves who have been hungry for 3 days and then saw a group of sheep. Other than that, there are some Mr. Wind and turret robots. These two robots rely on jet turbine engines to suspend in mid-air, and they can move freely on the terrain of the ruins in the south of the city. From the beginning to the end, except for the Wolf Pack team, Chinhuyan never threw a single living person into the ruins in the south of the city. Because he knew that this place was a hell, a complete hell. Even if Torch City temporarily attacked with tanks and troop carriers that penetrated the ground, hell is hell, and the flames of hell will always completely burn their enemies to ashes. Communication had been cut off during the ion storm, and the remaining hundreds of soldiers of Torch City's ground penetration force shouted to each other, trying their best to keep the line of defense intact, and then stared wide-eyed in search of monsters in the fleeting light of the tracer bullets. The army commander shouted hoarsely, but the headquarters of the 2nd Infantry Division no longer responded, so he bravely led the staff and logistics personnel to the battlefield. But B.O.W will not give up killing because of bravery. In front of them, all fresh life is food. Accompanied by lightning strikes one after another, the rain became heavier and heavier. The soldiers in Torch City shivered in the heavy rain, not only because of the sudden drop in temperature, but also because of the death that was already ahead. Click. A flash of lightning flashed across, and the instant light illuminated a licker that was roaring upwards. Its 1-meter-long tongue swayed like a poisonous snake, with blood and minced meat on it. There are enemies in the sky. Those mutated bats flying around. Once bitten by them, the T-virus will soon spread throughout the body, and those with weaker bodies will soon become zombies. Even well-trained and strong Torch City soldiers couldn't stand the constant bites. There are enemies on the walls. Lickers are agile and can move freely on any terrain. There are enemies underfoot. The zombie dogs pounced on the living creatures in front of them fiercely. They were short and could barely see clearly on the ruins with complex terrain. There are enemies nearby. Hunter Alpha, which is almost immune to most light weapons, is no longer able to resist the M-16 Mk2 pulse rifle equipped by Nod, but it is still not fatal if it is not hit critically. There are enemies in the distance too. Mr. Wind and the turret robot rely on the suspension engine to shoot continuously from a high position. The plasma gun of Mr. Storm and the laser gun of the turret robot continue to fire plasma clusters and laser beams that symbolize death. All these B.O.WS and robots have independent production lines, and will not occupy the production line of the manufacturing center of the Infinite Base itself. So their production has not stopped for a moment. And now, the dark B.O.W has surrounded these Torch City soldiers from inside to outside and from inside to outside. At the same time as the last Torch City ground-penetrating soldier screamed and was torn into pieces by countless zombies, at the secret airport on the other side of the ruins in the south of the city, hangar platforms unfolded and took off vertically from inside. Lots of AV-49 Vespas. Under the piloting of the third-generation synthetic human pilots, these Wasp fighters took off very skillfully, formed formation, and then flew straight towards the west side of the ruined city. In the northwest direction outside the ruined city, the 12th Armored Division is stationed. The advent of the Ion Storm also made the tanks and armored vehicles of the 12th Armored Division lose most of their functions, and basically became blind. As usual, seeing the coming of the Ion Storm, Robert, the commander of the 12th Armored Division, immediately ordered the entire army to shrink the line of defense. And what excites him is that the teleportation of the terrifying robot really stopped with the coming of the Ion Storm. According to Robert's many years of combat experience, once the Ion Storm comes, both sides need to retreat temporarily and use some time to regroup their troops. Because in the Ion Storm, the troops can only communicate with each other through limited communication, so the troops need to move closer. After the reorganization was completed and the connection between the various units was re-established, it was discussed whether to launch an infantry raid during the Ion Storm, shrink the defense, or simply run away. The premise of all this is that all military operations need to be suspended to restore the organization, otherwise, it is all empty talk. Now that the teleportation of the terrorist robot has stopped, the opponent's tanks, power armor, and bombing planes in the sky should also stop. Suddenly, Robert began to feel grateful for the Ion Storm. This storm might save his life. This Ion Storm, which used to symbolize death and darkness, now seemed to him to radiate the holy light of an angel. Instruction from the division commander. After the opponent stops attacking, immediately retreat and go to the designated coordinate point to gather. Then the whole army will evacuate. A messenger found the company commander of a mechanized infantry company under the armored division and said loudly. The company commander nodded heavily, and said, "The Ion Storm is coming, and the steel armors on the opposite side should also stop, and the planes in the sky can finally stop. Even if they want to use infantry, they can continue to attack. We will have an advantage in the weather. Come on guys. Drive the armored car over to block the road. Ready to withdraw." Phew. A beam of crimson laser light was fired from the darkness and hit his temple. The company commander froze immediately before he finished speaking, his hair immediately burned, and a scorched smell came out from his open mouth. Black smoke. The direct hit of the laser beam made his brain boil instantly, and then it was scorched. All the soldiers present were stunned, and they turned their heads in a daze to look in the direction of the laser. In the darkness, pairs of eyes shining with yellow light appeared, accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps and the whine of mechanical motors. Boom! Red flares soared into the sky, illuminating everything around. These soldiers also saw clearly the deity of these glowing eyes, that is AT-60 of power armor. They didn't stop. Even with the coming of the ion storm, these seemingly bulky but flexible and powerful power armors never stopped for a moment. Every time the ion storm hits the ground, it will bring up a strong electromagnetic pulse, but these bursts of electromagnetic pulse are all forcibly borne by the power armor. They emerged from the darkness like a never-ending demon. In the sky, the fleet of AV-49 Wasp fighter jets passed by at low altitude. Thank you for the 100 starting coins rewarded by the fox who lost his happiness under the white moon. Thanks to Samwick for rewarding Chunyuyan's 233 starting point coins. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 564. 556 Doomsday in Lightning, Part 2. Today. Now. Our last chance. Someone asked me, why did I attack the ruined city? Someone also asked me, why do I need to use 40,000 troops to attack a mere small city? Now. The answer is right in front of us. The bandit leader of the ruined city Chunyuyan has mastered the mysterious human cloning technology. They plotted against our torch city a long time ago. They use unknown technology to replace our relatives and friends with clones. And we get along day and night, and we don't even feel it. Think about the series of sabotage incidents that happened in Torch City before. In order to protect you and not cause panic, I suppressed these incidents. But this does not mean that these incidents do not exist. You can ask. You can understand. Understand the fear of the person involved. The owner of the food processing factory has always been kind and loyal to his family, but suddenly one day, he dumped tiberium mines into the granary. Then we dissected the body was discovered, he is a clone. Think about what his wife and children would think. The husband I get along with day and night is actually a clone? A clone who may serve the ruined city at any time, betray his own life, and betray everyone around him. Think about it again, if something like this happened to you, what would you think? Why do I need to use 40,000 troops? Because I know that I am no match for Chunyuyan. Even if there are 40,000 people, they can't beat the ruined city with a population of only a few thousand, just because of his elusive clone. But I have to fight? Because I'm afraid. Because I'm afraid that one day I will wake up and everyone around me will be a clone. Now, I know, I did lose. I don't know how much of the 40,000 army is left. The 12th Armored Division lost contact, the 2nd Infantry Division lost contact, and even the main force of our 1st Infantry Division was beaten. Scatter. But I still have to move forward. I still have to fight back. Because if I don't fight back, the next person to be cloned may be me. Maybe you. Every one of you. So even if it's just me, I want to fight back. In order to fight against Chunyuyan, I have already lost one eye. Now I don't mind losing another one. Those who are bloody. Those who don't want to become clones. Follow me. Fight back. Ion Storm is our last chance. Ruined cities' planes and power armor are unusable. Their teleportation technology is also unusable. This is our only chance. Now. Come with us. For our right to live. Lu Weiwei roared at the top of his lungs. His voice, which was originally as ugly as a drake, was torn apart like this, making it even more hoarse, like a broken gong. Ni Dong stood beside him with a solemn expression. In front of them, more than 2,000 soldiers stood quietly. This was the last force after the defeat of the 1st Infantry Division. They stood in front of Lu Weiwei without saying a word, even though the rain was pouring down, even though the lightning was rumbling, they did not move at all. Lu Weiwei said everything he could say, and with his embellishments, This speech deeply shocked everyone present. What he didn't know was that the content he added to incite people based on the limited information actually really spoke about the horrors of synths. The saddest thing is that you think you are bragging and exaggerating, but in fact, this is just the basic operation of others. But this also made the atmosphere look tragic at this moment. Lu Weiwei suddenly opened his eyes, and in his right eye, there was a red crystal inlaid. Even in the dark night, this red crystal is extremely conspicuous. Although the crystal didn't shine, but for some reason, everyone present could see it. But his left eye was a hollow hole, which looked a little scary. The moment he opened his eyes, everyone felt this scorching breath, as if the chill brought by the downpour had been dispelled. Wisps of flame-like breath seeped out from Lu Weiwei's right eye, and he raised his hand, and the long sword that had been carried behind his back flew out of nowhere and landed in his hand. The long sword is composed of countless machines. When Lu Weiwei pressed the button, the machine immediately began to deform and unfold, and finally changed from a long sword about 1 meter long to a mechanical giant sword 2 to 3 meters long and more than half a meter wide. Advance. The target, the ruined city. I'll be the first one. After Lu Weiwei finished speaking, he ignored the soldiers and rushed to the distance by himself. In the darkness brought by the ion storm, the ruined city of the blackout was shrouded in dark clouds, except for the large black shadow, nothing else could be seen. Like a dark mountain. Ni Dong followed immediately, and his thick wrist armor hidden under his clothes unfolded, revealing the mechanical structure inside. He is also a semi-mechanical reformer. A gust of high-pressure gas spewed out from his hands and feet, driving him forward at a rapid speed, which was not slow at all compared to Lu Weiwei. The speech just now was your most powerful and domineering speech since I met you. Ni Dong said, wanting to ease the tragic atmosphere. Duan Hessian is right. Lu Weiwei answered irrelevantly, I saw talent in him. No one taught him, but he can draw conclusions that are closest to the facts based on his own observation and reasoning. He has a long-term vision and looks at things are never limited to a certain part, but look at the overall situation. That's why you gave him another dust? No, I just did it randomly before, because I can find him at any time and get the dust back. But now, the development of the battle situation has confirmed his judgment, so that dust is the reward he deserves, and it is also the reward I planted. Seed. What seed? Humph. Since I can't defeat Chen, then create someone who can defeat him. Lu Weiwei's mouth showed a hint of ferocity. More than 2,000 people marched on the road in the rain. They found some vehicles that could be found, and then sent the wounded to the vehicle first, and moved towards the ruined city. Along the way, many people joined the team. Half an hour later, the number of people in the team had increased to 3,000. They may have rejoined the team because of the surge of blood, but after listening to Lu Weiwei's speech, they really understood the importance of this battle. If they don't fight, maybe even their own lives will be deprived. There will be a clone who is exactly like me to replace me, to live my own life, to be with my wife and girlfriend. This is something more terrifying than death. Now these remnants of Torch City's defeated generals, with angry flames in their eyes, they have become a real mourner. As the saying goes, the mourning army must win, and now Torch City will win. The ruined city was getting closer and closer, and fallen Torch City soldiers and destroyed vehicles could be seen everywhere along the way. The remnants of Torch City clenched their assault rifles, ready to go into battle. Sudden crimson laser beams appeared in front of them, shining on several Torch City soldiers in an instant. With screams, several soldiers fell to the ground without a sound. Immediately afterwards, more laser beams and bullets were fired, and several soldiers fell down. The opponent actually shot in the dark, and the accuracy rate was extremely high. The soldiers of Torch City immediately looked for a place to hide, and several flares were fired into the air, illuminating the place like daylight. Only then did the soldiers see that in front of them were robots. Lots of bots? Not only that, but the roar of engines came from the sky. Crack, lightning. Lu Weiwei raised his head, and with the light of lightning, he saw dozens of wasp fighters swooping down. Whoosh, whoosh, dozens of rockets fell from the sky and exploded among the soldiers in Torch City.